Hi folks from Social 130. Welcome to this first video in which we're going to be reviewing the theories from chapter 2, particularly structural functionalism, otherwise known as functionalism, conflict theory, and symbolic interactionism. So we're going to be reviewing those three theories. We're going to apply it to a phenomenon connected to families. And then the last concept we're going to be reviewing is the sociological imagination, and we're also going to apply it to a phenomenon connected to family. So 3 theories, 1 concept today. Let's begin with structural functionalism. So structural functionalism is the theoretical perspective that assumes everything has a role or a specific function, and when it's fulfilling that role or function, then the system it connects to is at equilibrium or stable, if you prefer that word. So for example, keeping it really macro, society is made up of different groups. Each group has a specific role function that needs to be fulfilled. If you want to break it down into institutions, right, you have your educational institution that focuses on education, the economy, etc. What happens if one of those institutions isn't doing what it's supposed to? Well, then it becomes dysfunctional, and if that dysfunction is disruptive enough, then it can possibly cause the entire structure or society to collapse. In addition to this particular theoretical perspective, there's terms that are connected to structural functionalism. The first one is manifest function. Manifest function is the intended and beneficial consequence of an action. So let's utilize online dating, since folks need to meet in order to potentially eventually generate families. So the manifest function of online dating, or the specific role, if you will, of online dating is to find a romantic partner. There's also latent function, which is an unintended but still beneficial consequence of an action. So in the case of online dating, the latent function was, yes, you met somebody, but instead of meeting them in the capacity of a romantic partner, that person is selling you a car, which is something that you were going to be looking for anyway. A dysfunction of online dating, which can be intended or unintended, is a not beneficial consequence of an action, in this case online dating. So the dysfunction of online dating is that you get catfished. You meet somebody and that person isn't who they say they are, and obviously the conclusion would be you have no romantic partner, or you were duped into a romantic situation that was definitely not beneficial to you. Alright, that was structural functionalism. Let's move on to conflict theory. This is the theoretical perspective that assumes that there are different groups that are interested in the same scarce resource. And what ends up happening is when you have all these groups that want the same thing, but there's a very short amount or small amount of that particular item or anything else that's scarce, the inevitable outcome is conflict coercion. In the situation of online dating, the scarce resource would be honest and attractive mates in which lots of people are attempting to compete over. So that creates a conflict. Now moving on to symbolic interactionism. This is the theoretical perspective focusing on the micro level, in which it assumes individuals' interpretations of symbols impact how or if they choose to interact. So for example, in online dating, someone may choose to interact with you based on how they perceive your picture as a symbol for something like you look rich or you look smart. Even if the interpretation of the picture is not accurate, based on that individual interpretation, it impacts the interaction. So this is completely based on the individual, ergo why it's micro. So we may look at the same picture and we may have completely different interpretations, which then affects how we choose or not choose to interact. Last but not least, the sociological imagination, C. Wright Mills. This is his term for the ability to see the connection between private troubles and public issues. So for example, a personal trouble for online dating is a person getting catfished. However, if there are a lot of folks who are getting catfished, then at that point in time it becomes a public issue. So even though it may not personally happen to you, because it's happened to a lot of people, it becomes a public issue, and as a public issue, it has an indirect impact on you in the sense of greater cost connected to apps in order to keep the catfishing down, for example. I hope these clarifications and this review of theory helps out, as well as the concept of the sociological imagination. I look forward to discussing more terms and concepts with you in the future. Have a wonderful day.